In Lagos, where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and mansions glittered under the sun, there stood the palatial estate of Chief Obafemi. Its gates gleamed with gold, fountains danced in the courtyard, and the walls rose like a fortress. To outsiders, it was a house of splendor, a monument to wealth and power. People often paused at the gates, marveling at its grandeur. But to one girl, hidden deep inside, those shining walls were not protection but a prison. Her name was Adizwa. She was the only daughter of Chief Obafemi, the jewel of his youth and the light of her mother's heart. Her beauty was like dawn breaking over the lagoon, skin smooth as silk, hair flowing like black waves, and eyes that once sparkled with mischief and hope. As a child, she was laughing at herself. She would chase butterflies through the courtyard gardens, her younger brother Teo trailing behind her, his small legs pumping furiously to keep up. Together, they were inseparable, two halves of one soul. In the evenings, she sat by her mother, Mario, who taught her how to play the piano, and the piano in the east wing came alive under Adizwa's fingers. Her melodies filled the mansion with light. Guests would gather to listen, while her father, Chief Obafemi, would nod proudly and say, "She has the gift of my late mother." Music flows in her blood. But the girl who once filled the halls with music and laughter was no more. Now, Adizwa sat alone in the east wing. Her eyes, once bright, saw nothing but endless darkness. Her lips, once quick to smile, had been sealed in silence. It all began on that cursed night. The sky split open with thunder as Mario, Adizwa, and Teo drove home through Lagos traffic. The rain fell in torrents, drumming against the car roof. Mario whispered prayers, holding the steering tightly, as her eyes strained against the storm, but fate was merciless. A truck's blinding headlights, a desperate swerve, the horrible screech of tires. Then, impact. The world shattered in a scream of metal. Days later, Adizwa woke up in a hospital bed. Pain seared through her body. Her fingers stretched out, searching for her mother's warmth, for Teo's laughter. But they were gone. Both had perished in the accident. And then she discovered the cruelest blow: she could no longer see. The world was black. The doctors spoke carefully. There might be a chance, surgery and hope, fragile as glass, was mentioned in calm, professional tones. But Chief Obafemi snapped. Grief, which had at first been raw and open, why had he failed them? Why had he not protected them? He was a man used to control, and control had betrayed him that night. To silence the chaos within, he turned his anger outward. He shaped blame into a sentence that would wound like fire. Standing at Adizwa's bedside, the man who had loved his family could not see the truth buried in his own haunted eyes. Instead, he spoke the words that would carve their own long-lasting scar. If not for you, he spat, his voice trembling with fury, they would still be alive. My wife. My son. Gone. And what remains? A blind daughter. A curse. Those words cut deeper than any wound. From that moment, his love curdled into resentment. When Adizwa returned to the mansion, there was no comfort, no embrace. Instead, her father locked her away in the east wing, far from visitors and family friends. The great halls that once echoed with her laughter became silent. He gave strict orders that she was to remain there, cared for only by servants, but she was never allowed to step outside. Her only companion was the grand piano her mother had gifted her. Adizwa spent hours at its keys, pouring her grief into haunting melodies. The music was no longer light and playful, it was sorrow-giving sound. Servants often paused by her door, tears streaming as her melodies told stories of longing, of love lost, of a world forever beyond her reach. Years passed. Adizwa grew from a girl into a woman, yet her life stood still. She spoke to no one. She did not smile. Only the piano bore witness to her pain. Chief Obafemi buried himself in his businesses, piling wealth upon wealth, but in the quiet of the night, he would sit alone, staring at the portrait of his late wife Mario, reliving the pain he could not erase. His bitterness grew to the point where he snapped at any slightest mistake made by his domestic staff, shouting on top of his voice. The mansion glittered outside, but inside, sorrow hung like a heavy curtain. Far from the marble halls, in the modest servants' quarters, lived Madame Ifeoma, the longtime cook of the Obafimes. Her hands were calloused from years of chopping, stirring, and pounding yam, but her pride was her son, Chike. For years, she labored to send him to university, sacrificing sleep, food, and comfort. Her dream was simple, that her son might rise above the life of servitude she had endured. Chike had just returned home, a graduate of ophthalmology. His dream was to open a clinic for the poor, to restore sight to those who could not afford the grand hospitals. Though his pockets were empty, his heart brimmed with hope. One evening, as he walked through the corridors of the mansion to greet his mother, he heard it, a piano. Not joyful, but aching. The notes seemed to bleed sorrow, echoing through the cold halls. Drawn like a moth to flame, he followed the sound to the east wing. Through a curtain's gap, he saw her, Adizwa. Pale, still, her blind eyes closed, her fingers dancing over the keys. The music froze him in place. It was grief turned into sound. That night, he asked his mother, Mama, who plays that piano? Madame Ifeoma sighed deeply, as she lowered her voice. That is Adizwa, the chief's daughter. Since the accident, she has been blind, locked away, and forgotten. The chief blames her for everything. He refused her surgery. She has not spoken in years. Madame Ifeoma warns Chike, do not meddle, my son. If the chief finds you near her, we will both suffer. But Chike could not forget the music. Night after night, he returned secretly, standing by her window, listening. The music pulled him like a current, each note whispering of pain and longing. Until one night, he stumbled and knocked a vase. The crash startled Adizwa. Her hands halted mid-note. And then, for the first time in years, her lips parted. Who is there? Her voice was trembling, fragile, like a bird unused to flight. Chike's breath caught. Forgive me. I did not mean to frighten you. I am Chike, the cook's son. Your music, it called to me. Something stirred inside her, curiosity, a spark of life. She did not send him away. Instead, she asked softly, do you understand the sorrow in the music? Yes, Chike replied. But I also hear strength. You are stronger than you think, Adizwa. And so began their secret conversations. He told her of the outside world, the chatter of markets, the laughter of children chasing kites, the smell of roasted corn by the roadside, the colors of the sunsets she could no longer see. She drank in his words, painting images in her mind. She told him of her childhood, how her mother taught her to play the piano. When she played the piano, both her mother and brother cheered and watched her play, their laughter echoing in the night. Slowly, her silence broke, her laughter returning like sunlight through clouds. Weeks turned into months. Their bond grew deep. One night, Chike took her hand and said, Adizwa, your blindness is not permanent. With surgery, I can help you see again. Her heart leapt, then fell. My father will never allow it. He wishes I did not exist. Then we will not ask him, Chike said firmly. I will help you escape. Their secret plan, however, was overheard by Madame Tolu, the ambitious head of housekeeping. Hoping to win the chief's favor, she told him everything. That night, as they tried to escape, the chief caught them. He ordered Chike to be beaten up by his security guards, while Adizwa knelt, crying helplessly as she pleaded with him not to hurt Chike, but he was adamant. He tightened her security and drove Madame Ifeoma from the mansion. Adizwa's hope shattered once more. She retreated into her piano, her sorrow heavier than ever. She prayed for help to come. Compassion, however, is not easily extinguished. Madam Uju, another cook and old friend of Madam Ifeoma, could not bear the sight of Adizwa's withering. When the chief left town on a business trip, she took a grave risk. On a stormy night she laced the guard's meal with sleeping herbs, and when the house lay quiet and dreaming, Chak returned. Bruised but resolute, he led Adizwa out through the servants' gate. For the first time in years, she left the walls of the mansion and breathed the fresh night air, with tears streaming down her face. The breeze kissed her face, and she whispered, "I had forgotten what the sky felt like." They reached a modest hospital, where Chak had already made all the necessary arrangements. He paid for the delicate surgery with his savings, sold a few of his possessions, and worked tirelessly to make it possible. He pushed her on a wheelchair into the hospital ward. Adizwa lay on the bed, her fingers entwined with Chak's. Fear came in waves. What if it failed? What if light never came? But there was also something steadier now, the presence of a man who refused to leave. It was time for the surgery. Chak sat on a wooden bench in the corridor outside the theater, worried. The operation was long and precise. When the bandages were removed, the world leaked into her vision like dawn. Blurred forms sharpened, colors calmed into order. The first face to resolve into clarity was Chak's, tired, tear-streaked, but smiling. You gave me back my life," she whispered as they embraced each other. "No," he said softly, "you already had life. I only gave you back the chance to see it." But joy was not complete. When Chief Obafemi returned from his business trip, he soon discovered her disappearance. The chief, furious and humiliated to have been outwitted, ordered his men to scour the city. Finally, he found her in the hospital, with her sight restored, his anger frozen, his hardened heart cracked, his gaze softened as he imagined Mareo, smiling by a piano, her gold pendant gleaming. For the first time, he saw the living image of Mareo, his late wife, in her. Adizwa said softly, "Father, I can see again." Chief Obafemi's chest ached. He had spent years drowning that memory in anger, blaming the only one left. Now, the dam inside him burst. The walls around him crumbled. "I blamed you because I could not bear my pain. I failed you. I failed them." The chief fell to his knees, tears streaming. "Forgive me, my daughter. I let grief blind me more than your eyes ever did." Adizwa reached and touched his hand. Her voice was gentle, not triumphant. "I know you were hurting, Father. I forgive you," as she embraced him. The forgiveness did not erase everything, but it opened a door. Chief Obafemi, a man used to ordering the world, learned a different kind of power that day, the power of admitting weakness and choosing to heal. With Chak by her side, Adizwa walked once more through the mansion gates. But this time, she stepped into the sunlight, free, and not locked within. The piano no longer sang the song of sorrow. It rang with joy, laughter, and healing, as Adizwa played a joyful melody with Chak, sitting beside her enjoying every beat of the notes, while Chief Obafemi began, in his own clumsy way, to make amends. He spent hours with Adizwa, learning to listen rather than direct, sometimes sitting in an armchair quietly watching her play. Chief supported Chak's dreams of opening a small clinic where those without means could come for care, and Madam Ifeoma returned to the mansion as Adizwa's mother-in-law while Madam Uju kept her job, but now with pride rather than fear. The moral of this is simple: grief can blind the heart more than darkness blinds the eyes. But forgiveness, courage, and love have the power to heal wounds. Adizwa found her light not in wealth or gold, but in kindness. And the cook's son became her savior, proving that destiny is not measured by riches, but by the strength of the heart. Thank you for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, bye.